spirit of romance, please give a special Ake Festival welcome to our guests, Fatima Bala, Adesuwa Nwokedi, Oreva Olujimi, and our host, Amyn Bawa-Allah.
Hi everyone. Gosh, I'm loving this energy. I was so nervous, but I was like, yeah, I'm feeding up. God will honor you. Okay, the rise of romance, and in the spirit of reclaiming truth, I seems like we're very far from each other. In the spirit of reclaiming truth, all of us here are romance girlies. There's a romance girlies, please. Amazing. Okay. In the spirit of reclaiming truth, I want to share a truth with all of you. Romance has always been on the rise. Yeah, romance has always been on the rise, but I'm interested in knowing what you think about this shift that is happening right now, especially in Nigerian literature. We have more people talking about romance. You have less people being shy to share, oh, I'm reading a romance novel. But still, when people share their reading lists or wrap-ups, there are people who will always be in the comment section claiming, oh, you read 100 books and 90 of them are romance. Like, you didn't really read anything. But at the end of the day, we're still having more romance conversations. I remember a reading list from a very big literary magazine. They were doing a Valentine wrap-up, and they were doing romance novels you can read. African romance novels you can read. And we had Purple Hibiscus, Stay With Me. But now, we have more romance by Nigerian novels. What do you think has changed? What do you think brought on this shift? What do you think has changed? What shift? Fati, let me start with you. You're farther away from me.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be back. What do I think has changed? Honestly, I think people are just writing what they want to read, so I'll speak for myself. I want to read romance, so I'll write romance. Today I want to write horror, we'll be having a different conversation.
What about you, Oreva? What do you think brought on this change that more people are comfortable talking about romance, or even getting romance now in traditional publishing here? Because we do know that it has been on the down low in the indie scene.
I think, like she said, people are writing what they want to read. Most of us that used to read romance were reading Oyinbo romance, right? And there's not much representation in the stories. And so I would speak for myself. I remember I always wanted to read a romance with characters that looked familiar, characters that I could relate to, right? People that looked and sounded like you. The dialogue was familiar. You know, the scenes were familiar. I think that's more like it. More romance readers are writing, is what I think is happening.
Okay, Adesuwa, what do you think brought on this shift and change in the conversation?
For me, I think it's the emergence of platforms, not only for the readers, but for the authors as well. Back in the 80s, Nigerian romance authors had a platform. Look at the Pesesa novels, for example, right? There were loads of them that were like romance, which we loved. But over the years, I don't know what happened with the economy. a shift of focus to more serious genres. It now became kind of like romance readers would like hide in the corners to read their romance novels, but now there are platforms for readers, like TikTok now, for example, where readers are being vocal about their love for the genre, right? And by so doing, people are no longer ashamed to say, yes, I enjoy romance. So for me, it's the platforms that have emerged.
Oh, okay. But for a culture that celebrates love, right, from Nollywood to the big weddings, our culture celebrates being partnered, right? But when it comes to fiction, for some reason, people tend to look at it. I was wearing a T-shirt yesterday that had "Hating on romance novels does not make you deep," and there were a few people who were like, "Oh my God, you're shading," but it's not a shade. It was just a statement, right? Because if you think you're bigger than romance novels, is it putting money in your account? So, from just your experience now, because you mentioned the platforms, from your experience and how people are engaging with romance, why do you think romance tends to be looked down upon so much?
Okay, I'm not even going to go into the misogyny. The people who think, oh, written by women for women, women's. No, I'm not even going to talk about that. Well, I think what I've heard is, oh, romance is too predictable. There's always a happy ever after. What's the joy in that? Yes, romance is formulaic. There's a meet cute, fall in love, conflict, resolution, happy ever after. But there's always a journey, and that's why I tell people. There's always the journey, because even me as a writer, I don't think any two of my books are the same, and I'm sure you both can relate. So it's the journey that we enjoy, even as readers, so yeah, that's for me.
Oreva, do you have anything to add to that?
Not really, but I think that, and I don't know if it's the reading culture where you think it has to be deep, and I do enjoy deep reading, but it has to have substance, and it has to be. We don't do entertainment for entertainment's sake anymore. When you have a story, they're like, okay, so what is the real tension there, right? And so when it doesn't have any of that, it just feels like fluff and it feels like light. But my argument has always been there's space for fluff. Half the time when I got into reading, when I got into watching stuff, I used to do it as an escape, right? Real life, my theory is real life is already too hard because it's happening with K-drama now. There's so much K-trauma, and I'm just like, please, thank you, please, is enough. And much of real life is already so hard. There is always room for fluff. But fluff has always been seen as fluff. And I don't think that all of romance is actually fluff, right? People have used these lighter genre to address heavier things, right? And it's easier to digest when it's coming in a heavy, in a light pill. So it's like all those capsules are easy to swallow, but the content is the content regardless. So I think it's that. I think people just think it's fluff and think that there's no space for fluff and just think that it's not that deep. It's not that they want to read heavy material, right? And I think it's just pretty much that.
Fati?
I mean, everyone has said it all. With romance, you're reading stories about women, about relationships. So there's no way we can discard that. Like, people always talk about romance. If they're not hyping it, they're putting it down. But then, so it's everything else in the world. If you're not hyping it, someone else is putting it down. So I think it's very important that we're very vocal. I think last year, people were very vocal about the kind of books they read. And that's why you could see everyone's books, being championed. So, yeah, people always talk about it. This rise is going to keep going on. So.
I do want to add that I think, I'm not sure, but the mini research I did, this might be the third romance session in 13 years of Ake Festival. Representation for the romance girlies again. Okay, so I want to know what I want us to talk a little bit about what do you think makes a Nigerian romance book Nigerian? And I'm not talking about just like giving name or like giving name or putting it in Lagos. Like, I want to know what you think of the texture. Like, what do you do in your work that makes a Nigerian book inherently Nigerian? Patty, I'll start with you.
If it's a story about a girl that looks like me that you can relate to, honestly, that's enough. That's Nigerian enough. If I'm talking about issues I've encountered in my dating life or my friends' dating life or like rumors or just from like wedding parties and stuff, that's a Nigerian story. So yeah, I feel like if I write anything, if you write anything, Adesuwa writes anything, it's a Nigerian story. Just the fact that we're Nigerians, that's all it takes to make it a Nigerian story.
Okay, well, I'm still on you. You write conflict in your novels that and you know, in conflict in romance novels, there's this fine line with hating the situation to the point that you don't even want them to get together anymore. Like, just end it there, just end the book, right? But in your novels, I want you to get into the craft, right? What's in your sauce and how you're able to work around that kind of conflict in a way that readers don't lose the plot.
Well, personally, I don't like things that come easy. So I think that sort of informs the kind of stories I tell. Maybe it's in the way I write about the girls. Maybe it makes them relatable. Maybe I write the dialogue honestly. I don't sort of filter. I don't try to make it palatable, right?
We can't tell.
And more importantly, I talk about how culture, knowingly or unknowingly, sort of affects every single decision people like me, will take.
When you say people like you, for those of...
I mean, girls that look like me. If you see a girl that looks like me, she's probably going through some struggle I've written about in my book, right? And it's not about religion, it's not about culture, it's probably more family restraints. I find that's something a lot of us identify with. How we're supposed to act and who we really are, behind closed doors. There's an expectation. Of course, there's always that conflict of who you are and who you're supposed to be. So I like to, touch on those kind of topics. I like to talk about the space where people find themselves, where they allow themselves to be honest. For Hafsat to Baby, there's family history as well, where we have a hush-hush culture when it comes to love, when it comes to romance. And with family secrets, there are some times that, the truth eventually will come out, whether or not you like it. And I think because you follow these characters through the highs and the lows, you find yourself really into their stories. And, their triumphs and their losses become something you relate with strongly. Yeah.
Okay. Oreva, I wanted to ask you about how you're able to write chemistry in such short pages, because yours is a collection of short stories, this thing called Love. What was the secret to that? Because sometimes we need, a lot of us, well, not a lot of us, let me speak for myself. I don't like Insta love, right? But you were able to build tension and chemistry within short pages with these different stories. What is this? How do you go about that?
I think that much of tension and yearning is in the dialogue and in the unsaid things. And so when you're watching a movie, there's like soundtrack, right? And they're looking into each other's eyes and then they hold the last of their fingers. And when you're writing about it, you can't write soundtrack into the book, right? You can't play Ed Sheeran, you can't write that. And so much of it is writing characters that are easy to fall in love with. Characters that remind you of yourself or your crush or your ex, or your neighbor, or or somebody that you're like, so because you're seeing something relatable, somebody that you can kind of put a face or a name to, it's easy to imagine how this plus this will give you this. I think. That pretty much, let me not lie to you, I don't think I really put much thought into the chemistry, but I think with each story, I wanted it to have its own breath. So in the sense that the dialogue and in the things that are not said, and so what did he do? How did he do? How can, even though you're reading this story and he hasn't yet said, I like you, you can tell that, boy, yeah, he really likes this baby, right? Without even him confessing. So by the time he's getting to the confession, you're already invested in the actions that he's done, right?
Fantastic. Adesuwa, yours. You. Are there any swans here? Okay. But for your books, I want to focus on how you write desire, right? Whether it's subtle or steamy. How do you decide what feels authentic? How do you decide what the character needs when writing these books?
Okay, so Fatih and Oreva both touched on relatability. That's really important because if I'm not feeling it as deeply as I'm imagining these characters to feel, then my readers, it won't carry to my readers. And I think it begins way before that scene I'm writing. It's in the build-up, it's in the banter, it's how the characters are emoting, right? And at that point in time, I need to be able to feel it very deeply because I tend to like writing deeply flawed characters because that's how they're very relatable to me because I'm not perfect. So I need to feel it deeply, and if I feel it deeply, then hopefully it comes across on the pages.
But when you say feeling it deeply, what does that look like? Is it just sitting with the character, you have the storyboard, and you just, or you have, what's it called, a mood board, and you just stare? Like, I just want to know what does feeling it deeply mean?
So before I start typing, I've already started with my playlist. Like the playlist is the first. I put together my playlist first. That kind of inspires the story, gives me an idea of what the spirit of the romance is going to be. So I sit with the playlist for a few months before I now go into my, storyboard. I've shared my storyboard a few times on some Zoom calls where there are pictures, there are all sorts of things that inspire me, and then I do a dump, right? So by the time I'm opening my laptop to start writing, those characters are already inside my heart. I already feel everything they're saying, everything they're speaking. I think I mentioned one of my books about a character who was going through addiction. I joined support groups on Instagram just to be able to read what these people who were recovering addicts were actually feeling. So that way, it puts me in the heart of the character before I start typing.
Oh. I do know that easy writing it takes a lot of hard, what's the word? Not backstory, but the background work, the process, the behind the scenes. It's a lot of hard work. I'm curious, there's this thing that is happening in romance novels globally, right? Where I'm not a publisher, so I don't know what the publishers are doing, but this is what we know as readers, that it's almost like editors and agents tend to give tropes to their authors to write towards. Like, write a close proximity novel or write a friends to lovers novel. Are we in a situation where we're seeing that here yet at all?
Not me.
Not me. So when you're writing a novel, whichever literary trope like pops up, happens like you're just following the story.
I mean, if you see an opportunity for like a one-bed trope, jump on it.
Okay, they say you never forget your first. So I'm curious about the romance novel that got you into this space, or that maybe scandalized you. I don't know, but you were like, you know what? I actually want to write this. Let me start with you, Oreva. What was the first romance novel that you read and you were like, this is, I want to do more of this?
Actually, it wasn't a romance novel. Or it wasn't termed as a romance novel. It was a Karen Kingsbury novel about 1,000 Tomorrows, where the girl had like cystic fibrosis, I think, and she used to ride bulls, and which was very dangerous. But YOLO, you die once. Um, she met this other bull rider who fell in love with her, and now he's giving her one of his lungs, I think. And at the time of the surgery, they had said, this thing you're going to give her is only going to buy her 3 more years. And he was like, 3 more years is perfect. That's all I need. And they lived the 3 years. And then I was reading, I said, it's crazy. And it was a Christian novel, right? It was about all those faith and all those things. But I was just like, this love. And I think that's the first book off the top of my head that I remembered reading, and I was like, this is really lovely. But I say all the time that my first introduction to love was my parents. Anybody who's ever met my parents know that they will kiss in front of you. Just forget. They will do it in front of you, right? My parents were very openly expressive. And so from when I was young, I was surrounded by that. And so it wasn't until I started interacting with other people that I realized, okay, well, this world is wicked. Because in my house, it was very much love and light. So I pretty much grew up in a bit of a bubble, right? And so imagine my shock. Anyway, but yes, the first book I read, I think it was 1,000 Tomorrows, and I thought, this is so precious, this is so beautiful. And I started thinking, will I give someone my lungs if it's just 3 years? I need real ROI, real return on investment. Sorry, I work in finance. I need real return on investment, but I'm rambling. The first book I read that I really liked was 1,000 Tomorrows, and I thought, this is precious. I want to write stories like that.
I've added that to my TBR. Fatima.
I read the acknowledgements in your book, and where you mentioned your parents, I thought that was so sweet. Yeah. I grew up on like a cocktail of Harlequin romance, and
Didn't we all?
I mean, I had older cousins, and who lived with us, and pace setters. So I always read about relationships. I can't really pinpoint a particular one that I'll say sort of drove me towards writing it. But I remember the time where I was reading a Nigerian book and I saw a couple and I was like, oh my God, yes. And it was Hajia Binta and Reza.
Aha!
And I remember reading that and I was like, yeah, I mean, it wasn't, of course, it was a very interesting relationship. But I remember, recognizing her, right? I knew there was a woman like that on my street. Even Reza, I mean, there was a guy like that would you quickly walk away from as soon as you saw him. But yeah, that was a time where I was reading like Nigerian literature and I was like, yes, my people. Yeah.
Of that. Adesuwa.
Don't judge.
For me, the light bulb moment, what switched on the light for me wasn't a book. I was 7 years old when I watched the movie Splash, right? And just watching Tom Hanks, his character fell in love with a mermaid at age, 9, 10. That movie, I was blown away by that movie. I think I watched it like 10 times in succession, right? That was what switched on for me. And then after that, of course, the Pacesetters read and M&Bs, but then was reading what we used to call bestsellers those days. These multi-generational family sagas, right?
Okay.
They were heavy on the romance. Minstrel's Daughter, Princess Daisy. I knew that I wanted to write stories like that one day. So, yeah, that's what inspired.
So how was your journey into writing romance novels? Because I know, Adesuwa, you started on the indie scene. How was the journey for you getting to here? And now we are discussing romance.
I know many people know this story. I didn't start off writing thinking that I would ever be sat here with such wonderful authors one day. It was just something I thought I was doing for fun. I had an online community. I'm like, I used to write when I was a teenager. Let me just do a few chapters because it was a very serious topic that the community was focused on, was fertility and pregnancy and motherhood. So I was just like, okay, let me just do one chapter every day just so everybody's mind will calm down. But anyways, so I started writing, and then it evolved to, okay, let's put these together and put them on the Okada books and the BAM books, right? And that was where I thought my space was, in the e-space. I didn't think I have it in me to venture into paperback. I didn't think, but it was about doing it afraid, right? The first time I put my money behind printing my own paperbacks, that was 2022, for Call Me Legachi. So I just decided, you know what, let me just do this. And because back then, you couldn't aspire to have a publisher interested in your romance manuscripts, right?
Why do you think that is?
Because the notion was, okay, the publishers were only interested in the more serious, books with gravitas, some heavy literary fiction, with your romance manuscripts. Yeah. So I started doing that, and in 2023, some discussions, paid off, and yeah, this year, my books now have wider circulation than I could have on my own. So
That's amazing. Fati, I want to know, your trajectory is only something the Wattpad girls can dream of, right? So what was your journey like into romance? And now, Broken, you've created some of our favorite Nigerian book boyfriends. So what was the journey like?
So in sometime during the pandemic, I stumbled on Wattpad, and I started reading stories. I was so happy when I saw.
Sorry.
Yeah.
For the locals, Wattpad is a platform where Wattpad is a platform where you just write as the spirit leads, and people read and follow your account, right? Okay.
So I started reading on Wattpad, and well, to me, I felt like something was missing. There was a particular story I was looking for. So I wrote Broken, and it was really just like a tongue-in-cheek response to all the well-behaved girls and behaved guys, doing love. I didn't expect it to blow up like that, right? So, and it did. And
what does blow up like? What was blowing up like? Like, was it just like lots of comments, or what was blowing up?
Like, people were telling me about my own story. Like, oh my God, you have to read this book. And I was like, okay, because I was anonymous, right? I was an anonymous writer. Because I felt like the only way I could write a story, the only way I could write a guy like Amyn Bawa-Allah was to be anonymous, because, yeah, I gave him a lot of leeway. But it got big, and eventually I self-published, and that went great. And then Masobe reached out and, got it published, and then, it got to everyone. But it wasn't a journey I thought I was ever going to have. I never thought I was going to be a writer. I was always reading Adesuwa's books. I loved them, Whenever IK was going on, Yusra would send me links, and I'd be watching people on stage here. So for me, it was something I just did as a response to stories that I saw, or maybe expectations I felt I wanted to correct, maybe characterizations I felt needed a kind of motive that I could understand, right? And again, maybe a better explanation of why we make the decisions we do. So I'm talking about maybe northern Nigerian Muslims. So I think that was the only reason why I wrote those stories. And to be very honest, it was written for the girls on Wattpad. I wasn't like, I was just like, you know what, you guys, here's the story. But I remember someone saying that sometimes if you want something to be accepted by even a wider range of audience, you have to be very particular in your direction, in who you want it to be for, because that's the way it will actually resonate more with people. And I really believe that, especially for Broken. With Have Said to Baby, I was just trying to write was different from Faiza, because one of my urges is something I hate seeing is when people define people by this archetype, like, oh, every Hausa girl is this, every Yoruba girl is like this, every Igbo boy is like this. So I wanted to write a Faiza who was not Faiza, right? So I wanted to write a Muslim girl who was, of course, you see her and you know she's Muslim, but in her decisions, in her lifestyle, she's not exactly like the other Muslim. And why is that? Because there's no single template for a Hausa Muslim girl or a Hausa Muslim guy. Like, we're just
not a monolith.
Exactly. Remove the Hausa, you can replace it with Yoruba, Igbo, right? So I think it's just that trying to not make a single story out of a whole tribe that makes me write the kind of characters that I write. So yeah, I think sometimes in trying to just narrative, because really the stories we don't tell, people will either tell them wrongly or not tell them at all. So I feel like, well, if I want stories about Ibrahims and Zurias to exist, then I have to put in the work.
I'm so glad you wrote those stories and that they exist.
Thank you.
Oreva, how was your journey into this genre? Also, why a collection of stories?
Thank you
as
very
a
much for
debut?
that question. Sorry, random. I wanted to add that for her, because I live in Abuja, right? So when you're seeing like stories, it's always like Lagos. I'm just like, yeah. So when I read Broken before I read Hafsatu Baby, and I was like, you know, why here? You know, you're seeing places, you're hearing about places that you know. If you're in Abuja, then you have northern Muslim friends, and you're like, this is, this is a Fatima, this is an Aisha. Like, I know somebody in the book. Sorry. So back to me. I feel like I want to say that I stumbled into it. Here's why. I like love. I like just generally I like love. And so I had 2 self-published books before, which were on, I'd like to believe were on different subject matters, right? But every time I would get feedback about the book, they would speak to a couple in the story. I'm like, that's not what, I like the relationship between so and so. And so sometime in 2018, I made a decision that I was going to write every day. Off the top of my head, I'll just make sure I pen something down every day. And so what that meant for me was now I have a catalog of just semi-unfinished drafts. Fast forward to 2023, I am scrolling on Instagram and I see a Masobe submission saying, submit your manuscript, wanting, right? And then so I go to the, I'm taking you through how I stumbled. So I go to the instructions and what you need to do and to submit. If you're doing a collection, a collection of short stories, right? You had to submit the first 3 stories, I think. And if you're doing a novel, then you had to submit the first 3 chapters. At the time, this was the last day, the day that it was supposed to end. That was when I was seeing it. So I said, I don't have enough time to craft a novel. But what I do have is stories. And one of my favorite things to write about is love. And I've always joked about one day I'll write a book on different love stories, and I joked about it. And so I was just I went through my draft, did the thing, submitted it. Like Adesuwa said, you're not thinking they're going to call you back because love stories, what the heck? So imagine my shock. So that's why I said I stumbled into it, but I've always wanted to write about love. And so writing about this thing called love was really just this thing called love. I wanted to explore love in all its different facets. I say all the time about how love is incredibly nuanced. And even though it's similar in templates, no 2 love stories, like she said, are the same. And I wanted to explore that. I wanted to explore just the mechanism of love. And the only way to do that was to tell different stories that touched on different things at the same time.
Oh, that's amazing. From everything you all 3 said, I almost fear for someone who is starting or thinking of writing romance, because what is the constant in all your stories is you started doing it on your own. What if you were going to say anything to anyone now who has a love story brewing, right? Would you advise also, because Adesuwa, you mentioned earlier about platforms, maybe that was what was engaging the publishers to, take notice that this is a profitable, even though we know it has been profitable, it's a profitable genre to enter. What would you advise that they start on their own and maybe build community like you all did? What would you say to someone who is starting out or thinking of writing a romance novel?
Okay, on the one hand, the landscape has changed, so it's not as difficult as it was maybe even 2 years ago, right? But I will not, the importance of community is so key, because I know that when I actually started my journey, it was a community I had built when I was still sharing stories on Facebook, right? That kind of, grew and blossomed into what now Swans today. So having the community is helpful. And even though it's not necessary, but it's a nice to have. Yeah. But I wouldn't necessarily advise someone to wait, build a community for a year or two before. No, go for it, right? Your community can still be built along the way during the course of your journey.
Would you two agree?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's changing for sure. I remember even Masovi, they were big on We Want Romance last year, right? Or earlier this year, yeah. So I think it's changing. I feel like now, as a response to what the audience wants, the publishers are definitely going in that direction. So it's all thanks to the audience, to be honest.
Thank you, audience. Okay. Before I'm seeing that it will soon be time for questions. Oh, okay. Okay. But I have like one rapid round question I want to ask them, right? So, gun to your head, knife to your chest. Adesuwa, what is the greatest love song of all time?
You know that's very unfair.
Sorry. Because she's like, when you read her books, you always get a playlist. Okay.
If I were to pick one, it would be For You by Kenny Lattimore.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oreva. What is your favorite romantic gesture? It could be grand or subtle.
Thoughtfulness, I would say, consideration. So regardless of how grand or how small, it's in the, I did this because I thought of you. I did this because I knew you very well, right? I love thoughtful, like, the only reason why I did this, you know when somebody, you know how, who has watched this one where the boy was on a wheelchair that he died?
Oh.
Maybe before you, so you know the tights, the stockings.
Oh, the stockings.
Yes. Exactly. It was the consideration and the thoughtfulness. That's inject it.
Okay. Yeah. Fatima, what is one trope you would defend with your life?
One trope I will defend with my life. I don't like insta love.
Okay.
So anything that's not insta love, I would.
So friends to lovers?
Maybe not friends to lovers, but people who sort of meet and it's not like we're checking out for each other. And then, they get to know each other. Like for me, that getting to know each other is like, don't you dare skip it. I need you guys to go through it. So I don't know the name of that trope. Or, it's not slow burn, but maybe it is. I do love a good slow burn.
Slow burn.
Yeah, I definitely love slow burn. Maybe, you know what? One bed trope, if I had to.
One bed.
One
wow,
bed trope.
I did not see that coming.
Because it forces you to act.
She said one bed. I do like
a
a one bed. Like, I will eat it up. Okay.
And I've used it in both my books, so yeah, definitely.
Okay, so if you have questions, just raise up your hand and I will call. We'll have time for like two questions. Like two questions. Okay. Do you wanna? Ray is back. If you remember Ray from AKA Festival 2024. Is it?
Hi.
Okay. It's talking.
Hi. Hello.
Yeah.
Anyway, so quick question, general question. Speaking mostly as someone that just got converted to liking romance and is... And, I'm no longer on that. It's not deep enough, mostly thanks to Broken. But my question is that, do you ever factor that thing like, do you ever have I'm writing this a romance audience? I can also say that since romance is generally not since romance generally, like even outside of fans, like critics and the rest of them, generally don't see romance as a serious genre, even though I see it as something that can be serious. So do you write... I'll just be quick. Do you ever write with that?
Don't worry.
Do you ever write with that in mind?
Oh, me?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Ray. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
So for those of us that didn't hear, he was asking if since people don't take romance as very important, do we write with that in mind, right? do you write to convince people, that it's a serious? It's easy to say no, but I think somewhere we all want to be taken very seriously, right? Which is why there will be things, Adesuwa always talk about, domestic violence, or she'll talk about, she'll reverse the tropes, for instance, right? You've got playful entry in your stories about, the guy falling in love with his neighbor who is married and, the end twist kind of thing. So I feel like we all want to be taken seriously, so we do put things that we feel are very important, right? Instead of just boy meets girl and then they have a misunderstanding and then they get back together, let's put some milk siblings, whatever. So there's an education in there as well, right? Let's talk about Idda. Let's talk about things about Islam, things that people would not know ordinarily. So I think we all want to be taken seriously, and we do want to, sort of change that perception, because really romance is important. It's our life. It's like everybody deals with something about relationships, right? I think that we all know that has to be taken seriously. You want to answer?
So I have a question. I have two questions actually. I once went. My name is Nora Ogunsonya. I'm a writer too. I once went to a secondary school, for writing workshop, and I asked one of them, which book that a lot of them, which book they love reading, and they said romance. And I was wondering, is there a factoring of the young adult category of romance, or is there? Okay, awesome. Secondly, I met somebody this morning who is currently there who doesn't believe in love. So, what's your advice for her?
Hi, everybody. Hi. So initially, this question was for one person, was for Fatima Bala, but I think everybody can answer. How do you handle backlash? And when I mean backlash, I mean there are certain things that you write and you think that they are very important, and you find that people in said community do not take it as importantly as you do, and then they try to rip it apart. And how do you handle that?
Who wants to go?
To be honest, I'm very grateful to place in my life where outside chatter matter to me as much. Feedback is important, and to be honest, I will never see a bad review and sort of be like, oh, they're haters. No. There's something to be learned, right? So to be honest, I feel like every time someone has something negative to say, I try to find what's important, what I can learn, from that. There's sometimes as you're reading, you just realize that this person is probably just having a bad day and they really just want to tear stuff. They want to fight somebody. In that situation, I cannot help you. I'm not the person you are looking for. Go and find your trauma, deal with your trauma in a very healthy way. But honestly, I feel like people will always talk, and that's something I honestly believe. It doesn't matter. I've had to defend my own favorite books, right? So I feel like people will always talk. They always have something negative to say. It's very important, though, as a writer, that we're taking that as feedback. Though I take it as feedback if it's important, and if it's something that I feel like, well, I can't change it now. At least you're having a conversation about it, so that's good.
Thank you so much. Did you want to add something?
No, I think it's just being able to recognize the feedback that's constructive. Because some feedback is constructive, some just plain malicious, right? So being able to recognize that, and how you basically engage with that kind of content.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. If I wasn't a romance lover and I was listening to this chat, I would definitely be queuing up to get all your books. So you should definitely, they all have books for you at the festival bookstore, and they will be signing books. I'm so sorry, we're out of time. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for being an amazing audience.